word and indeed our commitment to the security of our treaty allies in the Indo-Pacific. Yes?
Thank you. Could you please share more details about Secretary Blinken's phone call with Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang?
So this was a phone call that the two had over the weekend. This was a phone call that primarily was to bid adieu to the outgoing ambassador and to the new foreign minister. It was a phone call really to set the stage for what will be their relationship going forward as counterparts. Secretary Blinken did have an opportunity to have a meeting with Qin Gang in his role as PRC ambassador to the United States last month in December. Going forward, their relationship will be one of counterparts, and we fully expect that Secretary Blinken will have a number of opportunities in the coming weeks and months to speak to Qin Gang as foreign minister, to see Qin Gang. We expect in the PRC in the coming weeks as well.
Qin Gang described in his tweet, he said he appreciates several candid, in-depth, and constructive meetings with Secretary Blinken. You mentioned one meeting. Do you recall any other meetings?
I do. They've had multiple opportunities to see one another in Washington here at the Department of State. Qin Gang is someone who has been to this building a number of times. He's had a number of meetings with our deputy secretary, but he's also had multiple meetings with the secretary in addition to his meetings with White House and other officials here in Washington.
Lastly, Qin Gang is considered as more soft-spoken and less confrontational diplomat. Do you see his appointment as a positive sign for U.S.-China relations?
Look, our approach to the PRC is predicated on our interests, and it is predicated on the knowledge that this is a relationship that is dominated by competition, a relationship where there will be and must be areas for constructive collaboration, but also one in which there will be profound disagreements and even areas that are more adversarial than not. So rather than focus on who is in any particular position, we are focused on how we can manage this broad bilateral relationship, arguably the most consequential bilateral relationship in the world, constructively and responsibly. It's not only what is in our interest, but it is something that the rest of the world expects of us as well.
Can I follow up on China?
Questions on China.
Okay, sure.
Thanks. Restrictions on people traveling from China to the US go into effect in a couple of days. Chinese officials, as recently as earlier today, called this a political move not based on science. They're vowing to reciprocate. How do you respond?
Well, this is an approach that is based solely and exclusively on science. Ever since the earliest days of this administration, we have based these types of decisions that are made, by the way, by the CDC in close consultation with the Department of State and others, but that are based on science, that are based on epidemiology, that are based on the very public health concerns that undergird them. In this case, due to the surge of COVID-19 cases in the PRC and the lack of adequate and transparent epidemiological and viral genomic sequence data being reported from the PRC, we're taking deliberate, proactive steps to slow the spread of COVID-19 and to be on alert for any potential COVID-19 variants emerging. These data are critical to monitor the case surge effectively and to decrease the chance for the entry of a novel variant of concern. Other countries have been driven by the same concerns and have applied similar measures during the current surge of COVID cases in the PRC. As we've said, and Secretary Blinken said the last time he was here, we have offered the PRC vaccines and other COVID-19 support. The PRC has indicated publicly that it appreciates the offer but doesn't need the support. We continue to stand by that offer.
And the second question, China continues to build up artificial islands in the South China Sea. Most recently, there were satellite images of the Spratly Islands being built up further. Other than calling on China to respect international law, what is this administration doing, or what can this administration do to prevent further buildup?
So this is something, a concern that we have worked together with allies and partners, again, since the earliest days of this administration. It's a concern that we've registered jointly in some cases with our allies in the Indo-Pacific. We issued a statement regarding our concerns vis-a-vis the Philippines just before the holidays. It's also a concern that we share with many of our partners on the other side of the world, with our European allies and partners. One of the elements that we spent a great deal of time doing in our first year in office in 2021 was attempting to develop alignment with allies and partners regarding the various challenges that are posed by the PRC. We came into office at a time where there was relatively little alignment. We saw many of our closest allies and partners taking markedly different approaches to the PRC. By dint of the investment we made in trying and attempting to forge that alignment with partners in the Indo-Pacific and in Europe both, as well as places in between, we now arrive at the challenges, and we now confront the challenges from the PRC from a much stronger position. So we continue to register our concern. If there are practical steps that we can or that we need to take, we are in a position to do that much more effectively now that we are bringing a large number of allies and partners along with us.
One question
yes.
on COVID in China.
Okay.
Before you,
Sure.
obviously you and other U.S. officials and the World Health Organization has repeatedly asked and pressured China to share more data about the COVID cases in the country right now. Is there anything the Biden administration can do to compel them to share that information? Because it's obviously dangerous for the rest of the world. So will they face any costs if they don't?
Well, I wouldn't want to get ahead of where we are, and I understand that PRC officials are meeting with WHO officials today on this very question. This is ultimately a question for the World Health Organization as the body that is in receipt, or at least should be in receipt, of much of this genomic and epidemiological data. It is not only in the rest of the world's interest that the PRC does this because of the potential emergence of variants, something we've seen from other parts of the world before, but it's also profoundly in the PRC's interest to demonstrate that they are being transparent, that they're being candid, that they are being forthcoming when it comes to the toll and the genetic makeup of the virus that is circulating inside the PRC. As I said before, the pre-departure testing requirements that we've put in place are a result not only of the prevalence of COVID within the PRC, but also the lack of sufficient transparency from the PRC. If the PRC wants to see countries do away with various requirements that have been put in place, there is a way to help bring that about. And that is with additional transparency.
And you think the WHO has sufficient tools to pressure China to share that information?
Look, I will leave it to the WHO to speak to their engagement with the PRC. Long before this COVID surge in the PRC, we have consistently called for additional transparency from the PRC regarding COVID, including in the context of COVID origins. We think it is profoundly in the world's interest, but it's also profoundly in the PRC's interest that they do so as well.
Follow up on that?
But not preparing to do anything if they don't, just to be clear.
Again, that is a hypothetical that we're just not entertaining
It's not hypothetical, they aren't sharing now.
that at the moment. These are ongoing conversations between the PRC and the WHO, and we'll wait to see how those